Waitress saw everyone stare at the Vampire King in silence until she whispered, "Don't scream." The blood dripped from his fingertips onto the white marble floor, each crimson drop echoing like thunder in the frozen silence of the restaurant, and Maya's hand trembled as she gripped the coffee pot, knowing that one wrong move, one gasp, one scream from any of the 37 terrified diners would mean death for them all. Wait, before the next revelation happens. If this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following this story from. To make sure you don't miss any unexpected alliances or awakened powers, subscribe and join our circle. The game is about to change. Now, back to the scene. The creature stood in the center of Bellamy's fine dining, his presence a violation of everything Maya had been taught about safety, about sanctuary, about the invisible boundaries that kept the night world away from the day world. He was impossibly tall, his frame draped in a coat that seemed woven from shadows themselves, and his face, God, his face was beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful, all sharp angles and dangerous edges. His eyes, black as the void between stars, swept across the room with the lazy confidence of an apex predator surveying his domain. Maya had been refilling Mrs. Henderson's decaf when he walked through the door. No, not walked, materialized. One moment the entrance was empty, the next he was there, and the temperature in the restaurant dropped 10 degrees. Every human instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to do anything but stand there with scalding coffee in her hand and her white apron still stained from the lunch rush. But she had been trained for this moment. Not by Bellamy's corporate handbook or her manager's tedious safety lectures, but by her grandmother, who had died 3 months ago after extracting a promise from Maya that she would never forget what she was, what her bloodline carried, what responsibilities came with being the last of the Clearwater witches. "Remember, child," Grandmother Iris had whispered from her hospital bed, her papery hand clutching Maya's with surprising strength. "If you ever encounter one of the old ones, one of the true vampires, you must never show fear. They feed on terror more than blood. You must be still, be calm, and for the love of all that's holy, never let anyone around you panic. Mass fear creates a feeding frenzy. It's instinct for them. They can't help it." So Maya stood frozen, watching the Vampire King, because that's what he had to be. No lesser vampire could command such presence. Survey the restaurant with those bottomless eyes. She could feel the terror radiating from every patron. Mr. Jacobson had been cutting into his steak. The knife was suspended halfway to his mouth, a piece of bloody meat trembling on the tines of his fork. The young couple in booth 7, who had been giggling over shared dessert just moments ago, now sat rigid as statues, their hands clasped together so tightly their knuckles had gone white. Even Rick, the line cook, who had survived 2 tours in Afghanistan and claimed nothing scared him anymore, had gone pale as paper through the small window to the kitchen. The vampire's nostrils flared. He was scenting them, Maya realized, reading their fear like words on a page. His lips curled into something that might have been a smile if it had contained any warmth, revealing teeth that were just slightly too sharp, too white, too perfect. "I seek," he said, and his voice was like velvet sliding over broken glass, beautiful and terrible all at once. "The one who killed my brother." The silence shattered into something worse, the held breath quiet of absolute terror. Maya saw Mrs. Henderson's mouth open, the scream building in her throat, saw young Sarah Mitchum's eyes roll back as she began to faint, saw Mr. Jacobson's hand tightening on his steak knife as if the ridiculous weapon might somehow save him. Maya moved. She didn't think about it, didn't plan it, didn't consider the monumental stupidity of drawing a vampire king's attention. She simply stepped forward, her sneakers squeaking slightly on the floor, and placed herself directly in his line of sight. "Don't scream," she whispered, but the words weren't for him. They were for everyone else, projected with every ounce of will she possessed, every fragment of her grandmother's training, every drop of magic in her diluted witch blood. The command rippled out from her like a stone dropped in still water, invisible but undeniable. Mrs. Henderson's mouth snapped shut. Sarah Mitchum's eyes focused. Mr. Jacobson's hand relaxed, and the Vampire King's gaze locked onto her. Up close, he was even more terrifying. Not because he looked monstrous, quite the opposite. He looked like a fallen angel, like something divine that had chosen damnation. And there was an intelligence in those black eyes that made her feel transparent, as if he could see through her skin to the rapid beating of her heart, the rush of blood through her veins, the tiny spark of magic that set her apart from the purely human cattle surrounding them. "Interesting," he murmured, and suddenly he was closer, without having moved, reality bending around him in ways that Maya's head spin. "You are not entirely human." "I'm the evening shift waitress," Maya said, keeping her voice steady through sheer force of will. "And this is a restaurant, not a hunting ground. Whatever you're looking for, whoever killed your brother, they're not here. These are just people trying to enjoy their dinner." Something flickered in those depthless eyes. Amusement? Curiosity? It was impossible to read. "You dare to tell me," he began, his voice dropping to a register that made the windows rattle. "I dare to ask you," Maya interrupted, and somewhere in the back of her mind a voice that sounded suspiciously like her grandmother's was screaming about the stupidity of interrupting a vampire king, "to consider that if you slaughter everyone in this restaurant, you'll lose any chance of finding the real killer. Because I promise you, none of these people have the strength, the skill, or the weapons to kill a vampire, much less one related to you." His head tilted, and for a moment he looked almost human in his confusion. "You speak to me as if I am a rational creature? Aren't you?" The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Maya could feel 37 sets of eyes on her back, could sense their terror and desperate hope warring in the charged air. Her hand was still clutching the coffee pot, and she realized dimly that her knuckles had gone white. Then, impossibly, the Vampire King laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. It held too many centuries, too much darkness, too many deaths to ever be called kind. But it was genuine, and as it rolled through the restaurant, some of the suffocating pressure lifted. "Rational," he repeated, as if tasting the word. "How long has it been since anyone accused me of rationality? 200 years? 3? He moved then, a blur of motion that brought him to the nearest table, Mr. Jacobson's, where he pulled out a chair with exaggerated courtesy and sat, folding his impossibly long frame into the seat. "Very well, little witch. I will be rational. Bring me your manager." Maya's mind raced. Charlie, the night manager, was probably cowering in his office, and she couldn't blame him. What was she supposed to do? Lead a vampire king to a terrified middle-aged man who would undoubtedly say exactly the wrong thing and get everyone killed? "I'm the senior staff on duty," she lied smoothly. "What do you need?" Those black eyes studied her again, and Maya had the uncomfortable sensation that he knew exactly what she was doing and found it entertaining. "My brother, Constantine, was murdered 3 nights ago. He was found in an alley 5 blocks from here, staked through the heart with white oak and ash, his blood drained into vessels marked with binding runes. This was not the work of amateurs or foolish humans playing at being hunters. This was calculated, ritualistic, and required knowledge of the old ways. He leaned back in the chair, looking bizarrely domestic despite the blood still staining his fingers. The scent trail led me here, to this establishment, which means either the killer works here, eats here, or passed through here within the last 72 hours. So you see, little witch, your innocent diners may not be as innocent as you believe. Maya's mouth went dry. She glanced around the restaurant, trying to see the familiar faces with new eyes. Mrs. Henderson, who came in every Tuesday and Friday for the early bird special? Could the sweet old woman with her crossword puzzles and reading glasses be a vampire hunter? The young couple, who looked barely old enough to drink legally, sharing their first anniversary dinner? Were they calculating killers beneath their nervous smiles? Rick in the kitchen, with his military background and his night terrors he thought he hid so well? Did he have another kind of secret? "I can't help you investigate my coworkers and customers," Maya said carefully, "but I can promise you that if you give me time, I'll look into it, quietly, without bloodshed. Because if you're right, if the killer is connected to this place, then turning it into a massacre scene will only drive them deeper underground. They'll know you're looking, and they'll disappear." "And what makes you think," the Vampire King said softly, dangerously, "that I would trust a word from your mouth? That I would delay my vengeance on the hope that a half-blood witch playing at being a waitress might uncover something useful?" "Because," Maya said, her voice steadier than she felt, "I'm offering you something better than revenge. I'm offering you answers. And because if you kill everyone here, you'll never know if you got the right person, or if the real killer is laughing at you from somewhere safe while you wade through innocent blood." The silence that followed was different from before. This one was calculating, weighing, considering. Maya could see the predator in him warring with something else, something that might have been reason, or might have been curiosity, or might have been the faintest echo of the human he must have been once, centuries ago, before the darkness claimed him. "3 days," he said finally. "I will give you 3 days to find me something useful. A name, a lead, evidence, something that points me toward my brother's killer. In exchange, I will leave your restaurant and its occupants intact." He stood, and the movement was so fluid it seemed choreographed. "But know this, Maya Clearwater. Yes, I know your name now. I can taste it in your blood, in the signature of your magic. If you fail, if you run, if you warn whoever did this, I will return. And I will make what happened to Constantine look gentle by comparison." "How do I contact you?" Maya asked, because apparently her sense of self-preservation had completely abandoned her. He smiled then, and it was the most terrifying thing she'd seen all night. "You don't. I will contact you. I will be watching, always watching." And then he was gone, not through the door, but simply absent, as if he had never been there at all. The only evidence of his visit was the drops of blood on the white marble floor and the stunned silence of 37 people who had just brushed against the supernatural and lived to tell the tale. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Mrs. Henderson very calmly picked up her fork and resumed eating her pot roast as if nothing had happened. The young couple looked at each other, grabbed their coats, and practically ran for the exit. Mr. Jacobson carefully set down his steak knife and flagged Maya over. "Check, please," he said, his voice only slightly shaky. "And I think I'll be ordering takeout for the foreseeable future." Maya nodded numbly, her hands moving on autopilot to print his bill. Around the restaurant, similar scenes played out. Some people determinedly pretending nothing had happened, others gathering their things with barely controlled panic, a few simply sitting in shock, their meals forgotten. Rick appeared from the kitchen, his face still pale. What the actual hell was that? That, Maya said quietly, tucking Mr. Jacobson's payment into her apron, was a very old, very angry vampire king looking for his brother's killer. And I just bought us 3 days to find them before he comes back and kills us all. Us? Rick's voice climbed an octave. What do you mean, us? This is your problem, Maya. You're the one who talked to him, who made promises. The killer's trail led here, Maya cut him off, which means someone connected to Bellamy's murdered a vampire prince. And unless we find out who, we're all dead. So, yes, Rick, us. She left him standing there and pushed through the door to the back hallway, past the storage rooms and the employee bathroom to Charlie's office. She knocked once, then entered without waiting for a response. Charlie was indeed hiding, crouched beside his desk with his phone in his hand. He looked up at Maya with wild eyes. I called 911, but they hung up on me when I said vampire, said it was a prank call. Maya, what are we going to do? We have to close. We're going to finish the shift, Maya said firmly. We're going to act like everything is normal, because panic is what gets people killed. And then, after closing, you and I are going to have a very serious conversation about who's been working here over the last week, who's been coming in regularly, and anything unusual you might have noticed. Are you insane? We should run. We should hide. We should do exactly what I said, Maya interrupted, letting a hint of her grandmother's steel creep into her voice. Because running makes us look guilty, and looking guilty to a vampire king is a death sentence. Now pull yourself together. You're the manager. She left him there and returned to the dining room, where the surreal normalcy had mostly reasserted itself. Several tables had cleared out, but about half the diners remained, either too shocked to leave or too stubborn to let a vampire chase them away from their paid-for meals. Maya picked up her order pad and went back to work, smiling at customers, refilling drinks, clearing plates, all while her mind raced through possibilities and implications and the terrifying reality that she had just made a bargain with a creature of legend. Her shift ended at 11. By then, the restaurant had cleared out completely, and Rick had already fled, leaving his station half-cleaned and a note about a family emergency. Charlie emerged from his office looking haggard, and together they locked the doors and sat at the bar while Maya questioned him. Anyone new on staff? Just you, and you've been here 4 months. Suppliers, deliveries, anyone who comes by regularly? Same people as always. Tony's Meats on Tuesdays, Peterson Produce on Wednesdays and Fridays, the linen service every Monday. Customers? Anyone who started coming in recently, or who comes in unusually often? Charlie pulled up the reservation system on his tablet, scrolling through entries. We don't get a lot of regulars, except for the early bird crowd. Let me see. There's a new guy, started coming in about a week ago. Always orders the same thing, always sits in the corner booth, always leaves exactly a 20% tip, never uses a credit card, always cash. Maya's instincts prickled. Describe him. Mid-30s maybe. Dark hair, beard, dresses like he's got money but trying to hide it. Expensive watch, designer shoes, but he wears jeans and plain shirts. And Charlie paused, his brow furrowing. He watches people. I noticed because I thought maybe he was a health inspector or corporate spy or something. But he just sits there, eating slowly, watching the room. When was he last here? Thursday night, 3 nights ago. The night Constantine died. I need everything you remember about him, every detail. They spent the next hour going through Charlie's memories, Maya taking notes on everything. The way the man held his fork, the slight accent when he spoke, the fact that he always asked for a table near the emergency exit, the small leather journal he wrote in while he ate. By the time Maya left the restaurant at 1 in the morning, she had the beginning of a profile and absolutely no idea what to do with it. She drove home to her tiny apartment above the bookstore, her mind churning. 3 days. She had 3 days to solve a supernatural murder, find a killer skilled enough to take down a vampire prince, and somehow survive the attention of a vampire king who could apparently watch her whenever he wanted. It was only when she was unlocking her door that she realized the vampire king had never told her his name. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it, cluttered, cozy, filled with the remnants of her grandmother's life that Maya hadn't been able to bring herself to pack away. Crystals on the windowsill, herbs hanging from the kitchen ceiling, books stacked on every available surface, their spines cracked and their pages dog-eared from generations of use. Maya collapsed onto her second-hand couch and closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling at her. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time she started to drift off, she saw those black eyes, felt that terrible presence, heard that velvet and broken glass voice promising death if she failed. She needed help, but who could she turn to? The supernatural community in the city was small and fragmented, every faction keeping to itself. Her grandmother had been a bridge between worlds, but Maya was just a waitress with barely trained powers and a death wish, apparently. A knock at her door made her jump. At 1:30 in the morning, a knock at the door meant nothing good. Maya grabbed the baseball bat she kept by the coat rack, iron core, blessed by her grandmother, one of the few weapons that could affect supernatural creatures, and approached cautiously. "Who is it?" "Someone who can help you, Maya Clearwater." The voice was unfamiliar, female, with an accent Maya couldn't quite place. She looked through the peephole and saw a woman standing in the hallway, backlit by the flickering fluorescent lights. She was tall, elegant, dressed in a deep green coat that looked like it cost more than Maya's car, and her silver hair was pulled back in an elaborate braid. "I don't know you," Maya called through the door. "No, but I knew your grandmother, and I know about your deal with the Vampire King. We need to talk, preferably before he decides checking in on you requires a personal visit." Maya's hand tightened on the bat. This could be a trap, could be the killer, could be anything, but it could also be the help she desperately needed. She opened the door, keeping the bat visible. "You have 5 minutes." The woman smiled, and there was something sad in it. "My name is Elena Volkov. I was a friend of Konstantine's, and I believe I know who killed him." Maya stepped back, letting her in. Elena moved with the same fluid grace as the Vampire King, and Maya's instincts prickled with warning. "You're one of them. A vampire." "I am," Elena confirmed, settling herself on the couch without invitation. "But not one of his bloodline. I belonged to Constantine's court, served him for nearly 300 years. When he was killed, I was cast out. His brother, Alexei, doesn't trust anyone who was close to Constantine. He suspects we may have been complicit in the murder." "Alexei, that's the king's name?" "Vampire King, Elder Prince, Lord of the Eastern Territories. He has many titles. But yes, Alexei Volkov, Constantine's twin brother. They were turned together in 1642, have been inseparable for centuries, until 3 nights ago." Elena's face clouded with grief. "Alexei is not himself. He was always the more passionate, the more dangerous of the two. Constantine was his anchor, his reason for restraint. Without him, Alexei will burn the city to ash looking for revenge." Maya sat down heavily in the armchair across from Elena. "You said you know who killed him? I have suspicions. There are only a handful of people in this city with the knowledge and the skill to kill an ancient vampire. The Hunters Guild would be the obvious answer, but they've been quiet for decades, ever since the Treaty of 1987. Then there are the Witches of the Obsidian Coven, but they have no reason to break the peace. And finally, there are the daywalkers. Daywalkers. Vampires who have somehow retained the ability to walk in sunlight. They're incredibly rare, and most vampire courts consider them abominations. Constantine was hunting one, had been tracking him for months. A rogue named Marcus who killed his own maker and has been leaving a trail of bodies across the country. Elena leaned forward. The day before he died, Constantine told me he had finally tracked Marcus to this city, that he was closing in, and then, suddenly, he was the one who ended up dead. You think this Marcus killed him? I think Marcus knew he was being hunted and struck first. And I think he's still in the city, hiding in plain sight, possibly even frequenting the restaurant because he knows it's the last place anyone would look for a vampire. A cheerful, bright, public space full of humans. Maya's blood ran cold. The man Charlie described, the one who started coming in a week ago, who watches everyone, who was there the night Constantine died. That would fit Marcus's profile. He's careful, methodical, likes to observe his surroundings, and he would blend in perfectly with humans. Daywalkers don't have the same tells as normal vampires. They can eat human food, move in daylight, even pass the most thorough scrutiny. So, how do I identify him? How do I prove it? Elena reached into her coat and pulled out a small vial filled with clear liquid. This is blessed water infused with silver and witch hazel. If you can get it into his drink, he'll react. Not violently enough to cause a scene, but you'll see. A slight tremor, a moment of weakness. Daywalkers are resistant to most vampire vulnerabilities, but not completely immune. So, how do I identify him? How do I prove it? Elena reached into her coat and pulled out a small vial filled with clear liquid. This is blessed water infused with silver and witch hazel. If you can get it into his drink, he'll react. Not violently enough to cause a scene, but you'll see. A slight tremor, a moment of weakness. Daywalkers are resistant to most vampire vulnerabilities, but not completely immune. So, how do I identify him? How do I prove it? Elena reached into her coat and pulled out a small vial filled with clear liquid. This is blessed water infused with silver and witch hazel. If you can get it into his drink, he'll react. Not violently enough to cause a scene, but you'll see. A slight tremor, a moment of weakness. Daywalkers are resistant to most vampire vulnerabilities, but not completely immune. Maya took the vial, turning it over in her hands. And if it is him, what then? Then you tell Alexei, give him the name, the proof, and let him handle it. Marcus is too dangerous for you to confront alone. Why are you helping me? Elena's smile was bitter. Because I loved Constantine. Because I want his killer found and punished. And because if Alexei goes on a rampage and violates the treaty, it will mean war between all the supernatural factions in this city, and thousands will die. I'm trying to prevent that, for everyone's sake. She stood, moving toward the door. Maya followed, still clutching the vial. One more thing, Elena said as she paused at the threshold. Don't trust Alexei. He may seem rational now, but grief does strange things to ancient creatures. He's using you, Maya. And when he's done, he won't care what happens to you or your restaurant or anyone else. In his eyes, you're all just collateral damage. Then why did you just give me a way to find Marcus? If Alexei's so dangerous, why help his cause? Because Marcus needs to be stopped. And because I'd rather risk trusting a vengeful king than let a rogue daywalker continue killing. At least Alexei has limits, even if he's forgotten them temporarily. Marcus has none. She left, disappearing down the hallway as silently as she'd arrived. Maya locked the door behind her, then leaned against it, her heart pounding. She looked down at the vial in her hand. Such a small thing to carry so much weight. If she used it, if she identified Marcus, she would be pointing a vampire king at a target, and she would be responsible for whatever happened next. But if she didn't, Alexei would come back to the restaurant in 3 days and make good on his promise. Maya didn't sleep that night. She sat at her grandmother's desk, surrounded by old books on supernatural law and vampire lore, trying to understand what she'd gotten herself into. By dawn, she had learned 3 important things. First, vampire twins were incredibly rare, and their bonds were considered sacred. The death of one half was said to drive the other to madness. Second, the Treaty of 1987 had established strict rules about supernatural conflicts within city limits, and the penalty for violation was death by coalition. All the supernatural factions uniting to destroy the lawbreaker. Third, daywalkers were not just rare, but actively hunted by most vampire courts, seen as threats to the natural order. If Marcus had killed Constantine, it was likely as much about self-preservation as malice. Maya arrived at Bellamy's for her shift at 4 o'clock, her nerves strung tight. The restaurant was already open for dinner service, and she scanned the room as she tied on her apron, looking for the man Charlie had described. He wasn't there. She went through her shift in a fog of tension, expecting either Marcus or Alexei to appear at any moment. But the evening passed uneventfully. Well, as uneventfully as possible, when half the regular customers were avoiding the place after the previous night's incident, and the other half were there specifically because of the incident, hoping for another brush with the supernatural. It wasn't until 9 o'clock, just as Maya was starting to think Marcus wouldn't show, that he walked through the door. Charlie had described him perfectly. Dark hair, well-groomed beard, expensive watch with a plain shirt and jeans. He moved like someone who was used to going unnoticed, his posture relaxed, his expression pleasant. If Elena hadn't warned her, Maya would never have suspected he was anything other than a well-off regular customer. He was seated in his usual corner booth. Maya took a breath, slipped the vial into her apron pocket, and went to take his order. "Good evening," she said, setting down a water glass and pulling out her pad. "What can I get you tonight?" He looked up at her, and Maya's breath caught. His eyes were hazel, normal, human, but there was something in them, a depth that reminded her of Alex's black gaze. Ancient, tired, dangerous. "The salmon special," he said, "and coffee, black." "Coming right up." She retreated to the kitchen, her hands shaking as she placed the order. This was it. This was the moment. If she was right, if Elena was right, then this man had killed a vampire prince and would kill again without hesitation. If they were wrong, she was about to poison an innocent customer based on suspicion and hearsay. The coffee was simple. Maya poured it, carried it back to the booth, and as she set it down, her fingers brushed the vial in her pocket. "Actually," Marcus said, looking up at her with a small smile, "could I get some cream?" "Of course." She turned away, her mind racing. She couldn't do it now, not while he was watching. She needed a distraction, a moment when his attention was elsewhere. As if reading her thoughts, a commotion erupted at the front of the restaurant. 2 of the customers from the previous night had returned, drunk and belligerent, demanding to see the vampire guy and causing a scene. Charlie rushed to deal with them, and every head in the restaurant turned to watch, including Marcus's. Maya moved. The vial was in her hand, unstopped, and she dumped the contents into his coffee in one smooth motion, then tucked the empty vial back into her apron. Her heart hammered as she delivered the cream, setting it down beside the cup. "Here you go. Enjoy your meal." She walked away on shaking legs, positioning herself behind the bar where she could watch without being obvious. Marcus picked up his coffee, added cream, stirred it absently while watching the scene at the front. Then he lifted the cup to his lips. He drank and froze. It was subtle, just as Elena had said. His hand trembled, just for a second. His face went pale. He set the cup down carefully, his movements suddenly less fluid, more forced. And when he looked up, scanning the restaurant, Maya saw something in his eyes that made her blood run cold. Fear. He knew. Their eyes met across the room, and Maya saw the calculation in his gaze. He knew she'd done something, knew he'd been identified, and now he was deciding whether to run or fight. Maya's hand went to her pocket, where her phone waited. She could call Elena. She could run. She could pretend nothing had happened and pray he didn't come after her. Instead, she walked toward his booth. It was possibly the stupidest thing she'd ever done, even more stupid than talking back to a vampire king. But she needed answers, and running would only delay the inevitable. She slid into the seat across from him, keeping her voice low. Marcus, right? The daywalker who's been killing vampires across the country, the one Constantine was hunting. He stared at her for a long moment, then laughed quietly. Well, that complicates things. Did you kill him? Yes. The simple admission hit her like a fist. Why? Because he would have killed me. Because I've been running for 15 years, and I'm tired of running. Because he represented everything wrong with vampire society. The arrogance, the cruelty, the assumption that beings like me are abominations to be destroyed simply for existing. Marcus leaned forward, his voice intense. I didn't choose to be a daywalker, Maya. It happened during my turning. Some genetic quirk that my maker never expected. And for that accident of biology, I've been hunted by my own kind for over a century. That doesn't give you the right to kill, doesn't it? When it's kill or be killed? When Constantine tracked me across 5 states, destroyed every safe haven I found, murdered anyone who helped me. His hands clenched on the table. I didn't want to kill him, but he gave me no choice. It was him or me, and I chose me. Maya's mind raced. This wasn't the monster she'd been expecting. This was someone backed into a corner, someone fighting for survival. But he'd still killed Constantine, and Alexei was coming for revenge. And if she didn't give him a target, his brother is looking for you, she said. Alexei. He's given me 3 days to find Constantine's killer, or he'll massacre everyone in this restaurant. I'm out of time, and you're my only lead. Marcus's face went hard. So you'll trade my life for theirs? Is that it? I don't know, Maya admitted. I don't know what the right answer is. But I know that Alexei will come back here, and people will die. And I won't let that happen if there's any way to stop it. There's no stopping Alexei. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Constantine was the leash that kept his brother in check. Without him, Alexei is... Marcus broke off, shaking his head. He'll kill me, yes, but he won't stop there. He'll kill anyone who knew me, anyone who helped me, anyone who was in the vicinity when Constantine died. The treaty won't matter. The law won't matter. All that will matter is his grief, and it will burn through this city like wildfire. Then what do I do? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. Run. Take your people and run. Get far away from here before Alexei comes back. It's the only way any of you survive. I can't do that. This is my home. These are my neighbors, my coworkers, my customers. I can't just abandon them. Then you're a fool, Marcus said. But there was no heat in it, just sadness. A brave fool, but a fool nonetheless. He stood, dropping cash on the table, more than enough to cover his meal and tip. I'm leaving the city tonight, going somewhere even Alexei won't find me. Tell him if you want. Tell him I confessed. Maybe it will satisfy him enough that he'll leave your restaurant alone. Or maybe it won't. But at least you'll have tried. Wait! But he was already walking away, moving through the restaurant toward the exit. Maya started to follow, then stopped. What was she going to do? Physically restrain a vampire? She watched helplessly as he pushed through the door and disappeared into the night. Maya slumped in the booth, her head in her hands. She had the answer Alexei wanted. Marcus' confession, his identity, even his motive. But the killer was gone, fled to parts unknown, and Maya had no way of tracking him. Would a confession without a body be enough? Would Alexei accept it, or would he assume she was lying to save herself? Maya? You okay? She looked up to find Charlie standing by the booth, concern on his face. Around them, the restaurant had returned to normal. The drunk customers ejected, the other diners back to their meals. I'm fine, she lied. Just tired. You look like you've seen a ghost. If only. Ghosts she could handle. Vampire kings and daywalkers and supernatural wars were a bit beyond her pay grade. Charlie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. He slid into the booth across from her, his manager face replaced by genuine worry. What is it? If I told you that you needed to close the restaurant for a few days, maybe a week, no questions asked, would you do it? Maya, what's going on? Does this have to do with that creature from last night? Please, just answer the question. Charlie studied her face, and she saw the moment he decided to take her seriously. I'd need a good reason to give corporate, but yes, if it's truly necessary, I could arrange it. Emergency repairs, health inspection issues, something like that. Do it. Close tomorrow. Tell everyone the building needs fumigation or the gas line needs checking or whatever makes sense. But get everyone out and keep them out. For how long? I don't know. Maybe forever if... Maya cut herself off. Just do it, Charlie. Please, trust me. He nodded slowly. Okay, I'll make the calls tonight. But Maya, you need to tell me what's really happening, she told him. Not everything, not about her witch blood or Elena or the treaty, but enough. About Marcus's confession, about Alexei's deadline, about the very real danger they were all in. To his credit, Charlie didn't interrupt, didn't accuse her of being crazy or dramatic. He just listened, his face growing paler with each revelation. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then, so, we have until tomorrow night before this Alexei comes back, and when he does, he'll find an empty restaurant and hopefully realize the killer is gone and leave us alone. That's the hope. But you don't believe it will be that simple. No, Maya admitted, I don't. Charlie rubbed his face wearily. I should have retired last year when my wife wanted to move to Florida. Should have sold the house and bought that condo on the beach and spent my days fishing. But no, I had to be responsible, had to keep working, had to... Charlie, I'm terrified, Maya. I've never been so scared in my life. But I'm also glad you're here, because I have no idea how to handle any of this, and you seem like you do. Maya laughed bitterly. I'm making it up as I go along, but I appreciate the confidence. They finished the shift together, working in tense silence, both jumping at every sound from the door. But Alexei didn't appear, and by the time they locked up at 11, Maya was wound so tight she felt like she might shatter. She drove home through empty streets, checking her rearview mirror obsessively for any sign of pursuit. Her apartment building looked exactly the same as always, but Maya found herself checking every shadow, every dark corner, expecting Alexei to materialize from the darkness. Inside, she locked the door, checked the windows, and then stood in the middle of her living room, unsure what to do next. She had information, but no killer to present. She had closed the restaurant, but no guarantee it would matter. She had run out of ideas and was rapidly running out of time. Her phone rang, the sound shrill in the quiet apartment. Unknown number. Maya's hand shook as she answered. Hello? You found him? It wasn't a question. Alexei's voice rolled through the phone speaker, somehow even more unsettling without his physical presence. Yes, his name is Marcus. He's a daywalker, and he confessed to killing Constantine in self-defense. He said your brother had been hunting him for years, and it was kill or be killed. Silence on the other end. Maya pressed on, the words tumbling out. He fled the city tonight. I tried to stop him, but he was too fast, too strong. I got his confession, but I don't know where he went. I don't know how to track him." "Describe him." Maya did, reciting every detail she remembered: height, build, eye color, clothing, the expensive watch, the beard, everything. When she finished, she waited, her breath caught in her throat. "You did well, Maya Clearwater." She didn't feel like she'd done well. She felt like she'd condemned a man to death, possibly justified, possibly not, and she'd never know which. "The restaurant is closing tomorrow," she said, "for repairs. I thought it best to get the people out until this is resolved." "Wise, though unnecessary. I told you I would give you 3 days, and I am a man, a creature of my word. Your restaurant and its occupants were never in danger unless you failed me, which you did not." Relief crashed through her, so intense it made her dizzy. "So it's over?" "The bargain we made is complete, yes. What happens next is not your concern. Forget you ever met me, Maya. Forget this entire incident. Return to your normal life and be grateful you survived an encounter that has killed wiser and more powerful beings than yourself." He was right, of course. She should be grateful, should be happy to wash her hands of this entire supernatural nightmare and go back to being a simple waitress with a quiet life. But she couldn't shake the image of Marcus's face, the fear and resignation in his eyes when he realized he'd been identified. Couldn't forget his words about Alexia's grief, about the burning wildfire of rage that would consume everyone in its path. "What will you do to him?" she asked quietly. "That is not your concern." "I'm making it my concern. I helped you find him. I deserve to know." Another long silence. Then, "I will hunt him. I will catch him, and I will make him suffer as my brother suffered. I will drain him slowly over days or weeks or months, and I will listen to his screams and feel nothing but satisfaction. And when he is finally dead, truly dead, with no possibility of resurrection, I will burn his body and scatter the ashes so that not even memory of him remains." The words were delivered with such cold precision that Maya felt her blood freeze. He said Constantine gave him no choice, that he was backed into a corner. He killed my twin, my other half. The only being in this world who understood me, who kept me sane, who gave me reason to exist. Nothing he says matters. Nothing changes what he did. He took Constantine from me, and for that he will pay in ways you cannot imagine. And what about the cycle of violence? When you kill Marcus, won't someone come hunting you for revenge? Won't it just continue forever, death after death, until— Be very careful, little witch. Alexia's voice dropped to a tone that made every hair on Maya's body stand on end, about presuming to lecture me on violence and revenge. You have walked in this world for what, 25 years? I have walked it for nearly 400. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched humans destroy each other in ways that make our supernatural wars look civilized. Do not pretend to understand the weight of centuries, the pain of immortality, the burden of watching everyone you love die while you remain, unchanging, eternal. "I'm not pretending anything," Maya said, surprised by her own boldness. "I'm just saying that maybe, just maybe, there's another way. That maybe Constantine wouldn't want you to throw away 400 years of restraint for revenge. You never met my brother. You know nothing of what he would want. You're right." "But I knew my grandmother, and she taught me that we always have a choice, that we're not slaves to our instincts or our grief or our rage. that we decide in every moment who we want to be. Your grandmother is dead, Maya, as is my brother, and the dead have no say in how the living choose to honor their memory." The line went dead. Maya stood in the middle of her apartment, phone still pressed to her ear, and realized she was crying. Not for herself, though she was terrified. Not for Marcus, though she pitied him. But for Alexei, for the ancient creature who had lost his twin and was now careening toward a darkness he might never escape. She went to bed but couldn't sleep, her mind churning through everything that had happened. By morning, she had made a decision. Probably a stupid one, almost certainly a dangerous one. But she couldn't just let this play out, couldn't sit back and do nothing while the cycle of violence consumed everyone involved. She needed to find Marcus before Alexei did, and she needed to find a way to stop the coming bloodbath before it started. The first step was information. Maya spent the morning at the city library, going through old newspaper archives on microfilm, looking for any mention of daywalkers or vampire activity. She found references to the Treaty of 1987, buried in obscure articles that described it as a gang truce rather than supernatural legislation. She found reports of mysterious deaths that might have been vampire killings. And she found one very interesting article from 15 years ago about a series of murders in the warehouse district that had stopped abruptly after a massive fire destroyed 3 buildings. A fire that, according to the article, had been started deliberately. And a fire that matched the timeline Marcus had mentioned, 15 years of running. Maya photographed the article with her phone, then checked out every book the library had on vampire lore, and took them home to study. By early evening, she had filled a notebook with information, most of it contradictory or uselessly vague. But a few facts seemed consistent. Daywalkers were created by accident, genetic anomalies in the turning process. They were feared by normal vampires because they defied the natural order. Undead creatures who could walk in daylight blurred the line between monster and human in ways that made both communities uncomfortable. And most importantly, there were historical precedents for daywalkers seeking sanctuary with witch covens who viewed them as fellow outcasts rather than abominations. Maya looked up from her notes, an idea forming. If Marcus was seeking sanctuary, if he was running from Alexei, he would need allies. Powerful allies, the kind that could hide him from vampire senses and tracking, the kind that understood being hunted for something beyond their control. He would go to the witches. Maya grabbed her keys and headed for the door, then stopped. She couldn't just show up at the Obsidian Coven's headquarters uninvited. That was a good way to get herself cursed or worse. But maybe she knew someone who could get her in. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she was looking for. Her grandmother's old friend, Margaret, who had moved to the city years ago and had always told Maya to call if she ever needed anything. The phone rang 3 times before a gravelly voice answered. "This better be important." "Margaret, it's Maya Clearwater, Iris's granddaughter." A pause. "Little Maya? Hell, girl, it's been years. What can I do for you at?" Another pause, presumably to check a clock. 6 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. "I need to talk to someone at the Obsidian Coven. It's about a daywalker named Marcus and a vampire king named Alexei and a lot of people who are about to die if I can't find a way to stop it." The silence that followed was heavy. Then, "Come to my shop." Silverwood Apothecary on 4th Street. And Maya, come alone. The shop was tucked between a dry cleaner and a Chinese restaurant, its windows dark and its door marked only with a small silver pentagram. Maya pushed inside, and the smell of herbs and incense hit her immediately, along with a wave of protective magic so strong it made her skin prickle. Margaret was exactly as Maya remembered, 60-ish, gray hair in a messy bun, glasses perched on her nose, dressed in layers of flowing fabric that might have been a dress or might have been several scarves tied together. She was grinding something in a mortar and looked up when Maya entered, her expression unreadable. "You look like Iris," she said without preamble. "Same stubborn jaw, same stupid willingness to throw yourself into danger for people who wouldn't do the same for you." "Nice to see you too, Margaret." The old witch snorted. "Don't take offense. It's a compliment, mostly. Now sit down and tell me everything, and don't leave anything out, because I'll know if you're lying." Maya sat on a stool at the cluttered counter and talked. She told Margaret about Alexei's appearance at the restaurant, about her deal, about finding Marcus and his confession and his flight. She told her about Alexei's promise of revenge and her growing certainty that this was all going to end in bloodshed that would violate the treaty and bring down the wrath of every supernatural faction in the city. When she finished, Margaret set down her mortar and pestle very carefully. "And what exactly do you think you can do about it?" "I don't know. Stop them from killing each other somehow. Find a solution that doesn't end in war. Convince Alexei that revenge isn't worth the cost." Even as she said it, Maya knew how naive it sounded. Margaret confirmed it. "You can't convince a vampire king of anything, girl, especially not one who's just lost his twin." "Alexei will hunt Marcus until one of them is dead, and there's nothing you or I or anyone can do about it. But if Marcus is at the Obsidian Coven, he's not. The Coven has strict neutrality policies. They won't harbor a vampire, daywalker, or otherwise, not when it means bringing a vampire king's wrath down on their heads. Marcus is on his own." Maya's heart sank. Then where would he go? Margaret studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "There's one other place. One person in this city who's crazy enough, powerful enough, and stubborn enough to stand between a daywalker and a vampire king. But going to her is dangerous, Maya. More dangerous than anything you've done so far." "Who?" "Selene the Oracle. She lives in the old cathedral downtown, the one that burned in the 70s. Been there since before the treaty, doesn't answer to any faction, doesn't care about vampire law or witch law or any law except her own visions. She sees things, Maya, past, present, future, all tangled together. And she has a soft spot for lost causes. How do I find her?" "You don't find her, girl. She finds you. Or she doesn't, and you waste your time wandering around a burned-out church." Margaret pulled a small silver amulet from beneath the counter and tossed it to Maya. "Wear this. It's a beacon of sorts. If Selene wants to talk to you, she'll know where you are." Maya caught the amulet, feeling the hum of magic within it. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. This is probably the stupidest thing I've helped anyone do in decades. And I once helped Iris try to banish a demon using nothing but holy water and good intentions." Margaret went back to her grinding. "If you survive this, come back and tell me about it. If you don't, well, at least you went out trying to do the right thing. Iris would be proud." The old cathedral was exactly what Maya expected. Burned-out shell, boarded windows, graffiti-covered walls, surrounded by chain-link fence that looked like it had been erected sometime in the 80s and never maintained since. The neighborhood around it was industrial, empty lots and warehouses, the kind of place people didn't visit after dark unless they were up to no good. Maya parked her car on the street, put on the amulet Margaret had given her, and approached the fence. There was a gap in one section, large enough to slip through, and she found herself standing in what had once been the cathedral courtyard. The grass was overgrown, the statues weathered and cracked, and the front doors of the cathedral itself hung open like a mouth waiting to swallow her. She went inside. The interior was worse than the exterior. Charred beams overhead, holes in the roof showing the evening sky, pews reduced to blackened skeletons. But there was something else here too, something that made Maya's witch senses sing. Power. Old, deep, untamed power that suffused the entire space. "Hello?" Her voice echoed in the vast emptiness. No response. Maya walked deeper into the cathedral, past the ruined altar, into what must have once been the sacristy. Here, the damage was less severe, and she could see signs of habitation: blankets in one corner, candles arranged in circles, books stacked against walls. "You seek the one who walks in daylight." Maya spun around. A woman stood in the doorway, backlit by the fading sunset. She was difficult to look at, not because she was ugly or frightening, but because her appearance seemed to shift, to flicker, as if Maya was seeing multiple versions of her at once. Young and old, dark-haired and white-haired, scarred and unmarked. "Celine? I am. And you are Maya Clearwater, last of your bloodline, fool enough to think she can stop what's coming." Celine moved forward, and now she resolved into a single image. A woman, perhaps in her 40s, with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes that looked like they held galaxies. "I've been watching you, little witch, watching you stumble through this mess with good intentions and terrible judgment. I'm trying to prevent a war. Wars are inevitable. Violence is the language of grief, and grief is the price of love. You cannot stop what's coming any more than you can stop the sun from rising. Then why did you let me find you?" Celine smiled, and it was the saddest thing Maya had ever seen. "Because I see multiple futures, and in some of them, you matter. In some of them, your choices tip the balance. I cannot tell you which future we're in, cannot tell you if your efforts will succeed or fail. But I can tell you that Marcus is here, hiding in the catacombs beneath this cathedral, and that Alexei will arrive within the hour." Maya's blood went cold. "You're going to let them fight here? I'm going to let fate play out as it must. But I will give you a gift, Maya Clearwater. I will give you truth, and you will use it however you see fit." Before Maya could respond, Celine reached out and pressed her palm to Maya's forehead. The world exploded into vision. She saw Constantine and Alexei as human brothers in 1642, dying of plague, offered the choice to live forever by a vampire lord. Saw them turned together, awakening into darkness, clinging to each other as the only familiar things in a new and terrible world. She saw 4 centuries of history through their eyes, wars and peace, love and loss, the slow building of power and influence. She saw how Constantine had been the gentle one, the voice of reason, the anchor that kept Alexei from drowning in his own darker impulses. She saw the night Constantine died, saw him tracking Marcus to a warehouse, confident in his superiority, not expecting the daywalker to be as skilled as he was. Saw the fight, brutal and quick, Marcus wielding white oak stakes with desperate precision. Saw Constantine's surprise as the wood pierced his heart, his last thought not of revenge, but of his brother. Worry for what Alexei would become without him. And she saw the futures, multiple paths, branching and twisting. In one, Alexei caught Marcus tonight and killed him slowly, and the violence woke something dark in the Vampire King that could never be put back to sleep. He went on a rampage that ended with the treaty broken, the city burning, and dozens of supernatural beings dead before he was finally brought down by a coalition of vampires, witches, and hunters. In another, Marcus managed to kill Alexei but was so broken by what had done, killing both brothers, that he walked into the sunlight and ended himself. In a third, Maya did nothing, and both Marcus and Alexei died here tonight, locked in mutual destruction. But there was a fourth path, narrow and unlikely, a path where someone interrupted the cycle, where grief was acknowledged and faced instead of buried in violence, where the impossible happened and ancient enemies found a way to coexist, if not in peace, then at least without bloodshed. A path that required Maya to be far braver and more foolish than she had any right to be. The vision ended. Maya stumbled back, gasping, and found herself still in the ruined cathedral with Celine watching her with those galaxy eyes. "What did you see?" the oracle asked. "Everything. Futures, pasts, all of it." "And what will you choose?" Maya's hand went to her pocket, where she'd transferred the baseball bat's iron core into a smaller iron knife after leaving the restaurant. It wouldn't kill a vampire, but it would hurt them, slow them down, give her leverage if she needed it. "I'm going to do something incredibly stupid." Celine laughed. "Then you are your grandmother's granddaughter after all. The catacombs entrance is behind the altar." Marcus is 3 levels down in the old burial chamber. And Maya, thank you for trying. Even if it fails, even if it all falls apart, thank you for trying. Maya found the entrance exactly where Celine said it would be, a stone staircase spiraling down into darkness. She pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight, and descended. The catacombs were exactly as creepy as expected, all narrow passages and alcoves filled with old bones, the air thick with dust and decay. But Maya pushed forward, following the spiral down, 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 until she reached a larger chamber where Marcus sat on a stone bench, his head in his hands. He looked up when she entered, and there was no surprise in his face, just resignation. "You found me. Of course you found me. How long before Alexei follows?" According to Celine, about 30 minutes. Maya sat down on the bench across from him. "We need to talk." "About what? About how I'm a monster who killed a man who was hunting me? About how I deserve whatever Alexei does to me? I've heard it all before, Maya. From every vampire court I fled, from every hunter who's tracked me, from my own conscience in the quiet hours. There's nothing you can say that I haven't already said to myself. What if there was another way?" "There isn't. What if you could talk to him? Explain what happened? Make him understand?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "You think Alexei wants to understand? He wants revenge. He wants blood. Nothing I say will change that. Maybe not, but you'll never know unless you try. And if I try and fail, I'll die in agony. Better to fight, to go down swinging. At least then I'll have tried to survive." "And what about the next daywalker who gets created?" Maya pressed. "What about the next person who's hunted for something they can't control? If you die here, if this cycle continues, it validates every vampire who's ever called you an abomination. It proves that coexistence is impossible." "Maybe it is." "My grandmother didn't think so. She spent her whole life building bridges between supernatural communities. She believed that we're stronger together than apart, that the divisions between us are artificial, born from fear and maintained by tradition. She believed that anyone could change, could grow, could be more than their worst impulses." "Your grandmother sounds like she lived in a fantasy world." "Maybe. Or maybe she understood something that the rest of us are too scared to see. That we're all just beings trying to survive, trying to matter, trying to find connection in a world that tells us we're monsters." Marcus stared at her for a long moment. "Why do you care? Why risk yourself for me? You don't know me, you owe me nothing, and helping me could get you killed." "Because," Maya said simply, "I don't want to live in a world where the only solution to conflict is violence. Because I saw what happens if this plays out the way everyone expects, and it's not good for anyone. And because someone has to try to break the cycle, even if they fail." Before Marcus could respond, a presence filled the catacombs, heavy and overwhelming. Alexei had arrived. He descended the stairs like darkness given form, his black eyes scanning the chamber until they locked onto Marcus. The rage in that gaze was incandescent, barely contained, and Maya felt the temperature drop as if winter had been compressed into a single point. "Marcus," Alexei said, and the single word held 4 centuries of promise and threat. "Alexei," Marcus replied, standing slowly. "I know you're here for revenge. I know nothing I say will matter. But for what it's worth, I'm sorry about Constantine. He gave me no choice, but I am sorry." Sorry. Alexei tested the word like poison. "You're sorry. My twin, my other half, the being I've shared existence with for 400 years, is dead. What do you want me to say? That I wanted to kill him? I didn't. That I had some master plan? I didn't. He hunted me, cornered me, and I fought back. That's all it was, survival. He was my brother, and I'm a person who wanted to live." The two vampires faced each other, and Maya could feel the violence crackling in the air between them, could see both of them preparing for the fight that would end with one or both dead. She stepped between them. It was, objectively, the single stupidest thing she'd ever done. She was a half-blood witch with barely trained powers, standing between two ancient vampires who could tear her apart without effort. But she did it anyway, spreading her arms wide, forcing them to look at her instead of each other. "Stop," she said. "Both of you, just stop for 1 minute and think about what you're doing." "Move aside, Maya," Alexei said, his voice dangerously soft. "This doesn't concern you. It concerns everyone in this city. Because if you two kill each other here, it breaks the treaty. The coalition will come down on every vampire, every daywalker, everyone associated with either of you. Dozens will die, maybe hundreds. All because you couldn't find a better way to handle grief than murder. He killed Constantine, and Constantine was trying to kill him. Don't you see? This is exactly what Celine showed me. The endless cycle, violence begetting violence, until everyone is dead and no one even remembers what started it." Maya turned to Marcus. "You have a right to live, to exist without being hunted. But you also took something irreplaceable from Alexei, and that deserves acknowledgement." Then she turned back to Alexei. "And you have every right to grieve, to rage, to hurt. But destroying Marcus won't bring Constantine back. It will just add another death to the pile, and it will turn you into the monster everyone already thinks you are." "I am a monster," Alexei said flatly. "No. You're a person who lost someone they love. There's a difference. You know nothing of what I am, what I've done, what I'm capable of." "You're right. I don't. But I know what Constantine wouldn't want. I saw him, Alexei. Celine showed me his last moments. And his last thought wasn't revenge. It was worry. Worry for you. Worry about what you'd become without him to anchor you." Alexei went very still. "You're lying." "I'm not. He loved you, and he knew you well enough to know that his death would break something in you. That's why his last thought was of you, not anger at Marcus, not regret for himself, but concern for his brother." For the first time since she'd met him, Alexei looked uncertain. The rage didn't disappear, but it cracked, just slightly, letting something else show through. Pain. Raw, absolute, devastating pain. "He was everything," Alexei whispered. "We were turned together. We survived together. We built everything together. Without him, I don't know how to exist without him." "You learn," Maya said gently. "You grieve, and you hurt, and you wake up every day and choose to keep going, even though it feels impossible. That's what my grandmother taught me. That's what survival looks like. I don't want to survive. I want my brother back." "I know, but you can't have that. None of us get to have that. The people we love die, and we're left behind to figure out how to keep living. It's not fair, it's not right, but it's real." Alexei's gaze drifted to Marcus, And Maya saw something shift in those black eyes. Not forgiveness, she doubted he'd ever forgive Marcus, but maybe the faintest hint of understanding. "If I let you live," Alexei said slowly, "if I choose not to exact vengeance, what then? You continue running, continue living in fear, continue being hunted by every vampire court that learns of your existence." "Yes," Marcus said simply. "That's all I've ever known. That's all I expect." "That's not a life. That's barely existence." "It's more than I'd have if you killed me." Alexei was quiet for a long time. Maya held her breath, aware that the next few seconds would determine everything. Not just whether Marcus lived or died, but whether the cycle of violence continued or broke. Finally, Alexei spoke. "I am not a forgiving creature, Marcus. I do not forgive you for what you did, and I likely never will. But I am also not a fool. Maya is right. Killing you won't bring Constantine back. It will simply add more death to an already senseless situation." He moved then, so fast Maya barely saw it, until he was standing directly in front of Marcus, his hand wrapped around the daywalker's throat. Not squeezing, not yet, but the threat was clear. "But know this," Alexei continued, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire chamber. "If you ever cross my path again, if I see you in my territory or hear your name spoken by my people, I will destroy you so thoroughly that not even ash remains. You live because I choose to honor what Constantine would have wanted, not because you deserve mercy. Am I understood?" Marcus nodded, as much as the hand on his throat would allow. Alexei released him and stepped back. "Leave this city tonight. Don't return. Don't contact anyone here. Disappear and take your curse with you." "Where should I go?" "Anywhere but here. Europe, perhaps, or Asia. Somewhere my influence doesn't reach. Somewhere you might actually have a chance at the life you claim to want." Alexei turned to Maya. "And you, foolish, brave, irritating little witch. You've interfered in things beyond your understanding, made bargains with creatures beyond your power, and somehow survived. Consider yourself lucky." "I don't feel lucky," Maya admitted. "I feel terrified and exhausted and like I'm going to throw up." Alexei's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "That's wisdom. Fear keeps you alive. Remember that." He moved toward the stairs, then paused. "Marcus, one more thing." "Yes?"